on, what type of man they deserve, and, how they feel about themselves, and lifting their self-esteem a lot of times because of their relationships with their fathers. But what really struck people was like, how did these girls, come up with this idea of, asking the sheriff to have a dance in a jail? And then why did he say yes? And at this particular time for me with the TED Talk, it was really to just show that Black girls can ask for things that they want, right? They can, do things on their own terms, giving the girls the power to affirm their voices. But most people were just interested in, how did you get in that jail, right? And I said, I got in there because the girls asked, and it wasn't me, right? And that was giving young people, not a space at the table, but I gave them the whole table, right? I was like, this is your world. What would you like to do? And here we are today. So Natalie saw the TED Talk, and she could tell you her journey after watching the TED Talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most powerful 8 minutes I've ever seen, and it just like hit my soul and heart and brain like lightning, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And I think that what Angela said about the wisdom of young girls, and it's such a special time where I think young women are so connected to their intuition and what they think about the world and what's important to them, and that can change as you get older, and your more risk factors and pressures of society sort of can muddle that. And so I just felt like focusing on stories of young women and the wisdom that you have at that age is just so like untapped, and we don't really like look at young people for change, and yet and historically young people are always the one creating change. So I really felt like that was so important. And then she says this quote, our fathers are our mirror, and what we think of them affects what we think we deserve. I'm not phrasing it exactly right, but and so that also just made me cry every time I listened to it, going like, wow, I have to think about the relationship with my dad and what that makes me think, what love is, what I think of myself as I move through life. And so I just knew that any person watching this TED Talk or a film about it would be impacted. And, grateful that we've had this 8-year journey on it so far. Yeah.
So 8 years in the making. I wonder how did the film sort of develop from the initial idea? Like, did the film develop from the initial idea? Did you have a sense of where the narrative arcs and the beats would happen, or did that kind of organically evolve over time? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was just really important that it was all about the wisdom of the girls. And so when I came to Angela and she let me have lunch with her in Richmond, I think we both really felt passionately that it was like all about kids and young girls' stories and their voice, and we were just the vessels to sort of let that come into the world. And so that really guided everything. But that also meant that we needed to spend the time with them, watch them grow up, and this was going to be a pretty long-term commitment, and the story would just be whatever was going to happen with these girls, and trust that what we wanted to come through would, and it did through all of them, really, their wisdom and what they expressed to their fathers, and how they can teach all of us through their forgiveness and humanity and wisdom, how to forgive and open their hearts to their fathers.
Yes, and I just agree, it was organically done. And I learned that you have to allow the doctor tell you what it needs, and that's exactly how I have been able to be a leader in my community. I kind of watch and learn. I'm an active listener. I pay attention, and I just trust the process. And Natalie and I decided to really be patient, right? Because our families go through stuff, y'all. They go through stuff. So we needed to make sure that they were also willing to participate. And sometimes they were, and sometimes they're like, not today, right? So you have to be patient. That's why it can take you 8 years. We're asking them to open up their world to hopefully change, their situation. But also they are advocates for other families that have very similar situations. One of the things that is a misfortune is that this is not rare for a lot of Black and brown people. So what we are able to do is inspire families that may have similar situations about what they can do in their own community to change some of these unforgiving practices that are happening around the criminal justice system. And so in order to do work that way, and you have to be a person that gets out of your way too. You cannot say, oh, we got 1 more year for the film. We got 10 more minutes. That's not how this works when you decide to do the work. When you decide to show up for something, you have to be all in. You need to be patient. You need to have partnership. And you need to really, truly trust this process. And I feel that is as organic as you can get when you're making something like this that really is supposed to change the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to touch on something that you both said about, the humanity in both the fathers and the daughters. And I think this film does an incredible and exceptional job at humanising the incarcerated fathers. And I wondered if you could both touch upon some of the challenges and rewards that you had in portraying their stories.
I think I wish Cambio was here. So our cinematographer, Michael Cambio Fernandez, he called us when we were talking to different cinematographers and was like, I was so touched by this trailer and learning about the concept in the TED Talk because my mom was incarcerated for 7 years when I was growing up. And so he just spoke to his own experience and going through security systems to, unite with his family and the emotional nuance and how that impacted his childhood. So he is also just an incredibly talented human being, but we all wanted to really humanize and make sure they were in a space with natural light, just handheld operating, but really in that space with the fathers, it was Cambio. So we know when to be there, when not to be there. It's all just let's make sure the right energy and the right people are in the right space. And so he really led the way with Chad and the fathers and was, put the camera down and just have a conversation and be part of the group. And that was very special.
Yes, and what I would add to that is before the dance that you were able to screen today, I was able to do about 10 or 12 prior. And so I knew that it was humanizing, not just from my own experience, but when the security guards go down the Soul Train line with you, you got them, y'all, right? When the security guards would come and say, I know we said 4 o'clock, but we think that y'all should say 6 o'clock.
And they were crying.
And then they're crying. Yeah. They're texting their own children, right? They're starting to shift how they even think about someone they're supposed to be guarding and protecting, that they may see as a threat, right? Now they see them as fathers, as human beings. And so when Natalie approached me about partnering with her on this film, we both understood, center the girls and humanize everyone. Well, that was our number one agreement. And we kept our focus on those 2 things in order to continue to make the film. And along the way, you can get easily distracted because the criminal justice system is meant to do that. Right? And so we have to check in with each other. Nope, we don't want to do that. We're not going to focus on this part. We're going to make sure we humanize them because I know that it was possible because I've already experienced it. Yeah.
And the daddy-daughter dance is just one of the most beautiful things I've seen on a big screen for a really long time. It's the emotional anchor of the film, and there's so many elements in that in that part of the film. Music, touch, movement, and I wanted to know how you both worked in a collaborative way to capture and convey the emotional depth of those elements in such a beautiful and non-intrusive way as well. So, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, great question. I think that Angela was able to teach me about all the previous dances, and so understanding how she would kind of bring people together, and that there was a hallway, then very ceremonial and make it very special, and a walkway in, and so I think it was really great for me to understand that and see some of that footage from other dances and what was happening, because we had one time to get this hallway and the one dance, and we didn't want to talk to anyone because this is such a sacred few hours that the camera has to be pretty far away, but just so so I think that did a lot of the groundwork. But then also, again, working with Cambio, we decided to shoot on 16mm film. Is we have very little tools to humanize and make that place feel as soulful and have as much depth as possible. So I think although a lot of people were like, if you've got one dance and you're going to film it on film, it was a risky decision. But I think that was really important and one of the biggest factors on making it really human when you can't do anything else and turn off lights and that kind of thing. But yeah, we had Cambio and one other camera operator, and he was crying so much into his iris. He was like, I don't know if anything will be in focus. And I just can't even believe what's happening around me. And thank God most of it is in focus. Yeah, and then I think he also was inspired by my works. I did a lot of music videos, and I have like a dance and music background. So Cambio and I kind of like aligned on some of the artistic choices and the lyricism of the camera movement, and sort of like dance is just such a healing tool that we often don't know. And I could feel that because I'd spent my whole life as a dancer knowing like how powerful that would be, and to do that with your father and to be in your skin and your bones, like I think really gets you out of your head. And I think that can be really healing on your nervous system and have long-term impacts. So it was just something I could just viscerally feel inside of me, how powerful this could be. Yeah.
And that's why it was important for me to partner with Natalie, because she, understood that. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't a jail story, y'all. You know what I'm saying? We have enough of those, and it's not working. Yes. And so when Natalie, approached me about partnering, I was like, as long as we make a love story. We want to make a love story. If we can accomplish that, we're all in. And she shared that experience with me. And, music is a healer for me. Music is a connector. It's something that always bonded me with my family. So that's why when the girls did come up with this idea around this dance in the jail, I immediately knew it was going to be a Soul Train line. I knew that we were going to have a DJ, but I still had to make it theirs. And I'm like, well, who's going to do the music, girls? And I'm like, get a DJ. And then they would go onto the board. So they understood that the music, they understood that they needed food. Food is for your soul too. You know what I'm saying? And they picked the menu. They decided what the color schemes were going to be, because all of that was the things that interconnected them. They knew that that was going to be what empowered them and made it feel real to them. And just as I trusted Natalie, the girls trusted me, and to make that possible for them. And if we could capture that in this film, then I thought it was going to be the love story that you all were able to see today.
Absolutely, well said. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I know it is a love